Hey friends. Maybe you can tell, maybe you can't, based on the pretty nondescript backdrop that I'm standing in front of, but I'm back home in my office, back from a couple days up in Santa Fe, where we had a lovely, lovely Christmas holiday, some great intense family time, kid time, cousin time, sibling time. It was good. And I always tend to both observe and then kind of appreciate the time right after a big kind of family event, because it always feels like we took a step forward. We moved somewhere. Sometimes it's hard to define, and this year we're not done yet. There's folks coming down here for a couple nights, and we have a tradition of doing family, we call it family sharing, I think is the relatively generic term that we use to refer to in a kind of an event or an evening, usually, when we sit and just kind of share what our previous year has been about, look forward to the next year. We usually do it on New Year's Eve, although sometimes it has to move because of people's travel plans and whatnot. But it's always an opportunity for family members, for all of us, to hear where each other are at on a level that goes beyond where we might sort of describe ourselves in normal conversation. I get the sense that one thing that has made this tradition stick for us, and that has made it really feel so valuable, is that, you know, I had one of my lifelong mentors, a woman named Renee Neblett, has always, I don't know if she coined this phrase or if she's quoting somebody, but she has always said, celebration lifts us out of the ordinary. So it takes a moment or a period of time and creates a sense that this is not the ordinary. This is not daily life. This is a special time. And for me, this family sharing element of our holiday gatherings has always been a really important part of the celebration. It's the part, I would say, where we all kind of commit to listening to each other. We commit to speaking. We commit to sharing something that we might, that might just be not something that would be necessarily hard to share, or, but something that might be more revealing than what would just come out as a matter of course in our typical daily interactions. And I think because that hasn't happened yet, we haven't kind of gone the whole way. We haven't had I don't feel like we're kind of like there yet with this particular holiday season. I feel like we've done part one, and part two of the book is coming. And even so, there's a remarkable amount of movement. You get a sense of, I think kids really make a big difference here, but you get a sense of where people are. You get a sense of where kids are very quickly. Kids kind of tell you. It's almost like they just transmit it. Very, very quickly they transmit where they are. And it's always lovely to get together, and of course we have a kid in the mix who's like part of the action. And so that gives us that's almost like having a thermometer that we stick in to the kid environment, and it kind of measures the temperature for us. We get to feel, we feel it definitely more intensely than if it was just myself and my wife observing my brother's kids, which actually was that way for a couple of years. So we had some experience with that, although the kids were very young. But there's just a sense of acknowledging movement, acknowledging growth. You know, like you might go from a summer to a Christmas, or a Christmas to a summer, and all of a sudden a kid who was a kid before is not a kid anymore. They're like a little, they've gone to a new, you know, Maria Montessori, I'm sure, would call it a plane of development. Their mind works differently now. You can talk to them completely differently. It's almost magical. It's almost like hard to believe, but it's also just the way it works. It's the way kids are. It's the, you know, so it's not like it's a secret. This is, I think, everybody's experience who's had the experience. And I think where I am right now at this sort of moment of pause before the next round starts is just in a place of real gratitude. You know, seeing Andrew yesterday, the osteopath who has been working on my body over the last couple months, and also been helping me, I think, just integrate psychically what's going on in some of these injuries that have happened. I think that put me in a place yesterday where I was so serene. And I spoke about it yesterday on my post. I was like lifted into the space where I know I belong, and I know that even these, you know, these injuries or whatever, whether it's these injuries or anything else in my life that poses a challenge, I know that those things are lifting me into a greater sense of awareness. And I had that experience yesterday, as I spoke about on my post, and I could tell, like, it was interesting because by the evening, you know, Sadhguru always talks about how the reason we need so much sleep is because the experience of living life creates tension in our bodies and our minds. If we could not create tension in our bodies and our lives and our minds, we wouldn't need nearly as much sleep. I mean, this is from a guy who claims to have slept 2.5 hours for most of his life up until his 60s, and then now he sleeps like 4 hours because he's gotten a little older and his body needs a little more recovery time. I mean, that's another level, but I think the level that he's on is exactly what he's describing. He knows, because he knows how to remain in a kind of perfectly serene place throughout the what must be just a maelstrom, a vortex of activity, running an organization of over 1 million volunteers. I mean, come on. You tell me that's not stressful? That's not like like an ordinary person wouldn't find that challenging, wouldn't have a lot to think about, wouldn't build up a little tension in their body over the course of the day. But anyway, so I've always kind of thought about that. I'm like, okay, like when I feel very tired, or I feel lethargic, or I feel like my body needs rest, I'm like, well, it's not that I don't want to get rest. But I also obviously we got to get the rest so we can get the rest. But we also want to look at, why am I feeling so tired? What exactly is the tension that's building up? How is it happening? What am I, because it's generally unconscious. Like if you're sleeping 8 hours a night and there's a guy who can run an organization of over 1 million people and he's sleeping 2, 3, 4 hours a night and telling you it's easy, you got to ask the question, like, what am I doing differently? And so all of this is a way of saying, yesterday when I came out of Andrews and I had that sense of like just grounding into exactly, this is like, body, psychologically, the sensitivity, don't go playing baseball with your Stradivarius kind of thing, which I talked about in that post. I found that yesterday evening, I was like, I'm not really very tired. And then I went home at like, I don't know, 10:30, which for me is pretty late, but I wasn't really I just wasn't very tired. So I went home, got in bed, woke up around 1:30, and I was just awake. My mind wasn't buzzing. I didn't feel caffeinated. I didn't feel like I had anything in my system that was pushing me or keeping me awake. I just felt awake. And then I did start thinking about some things. I started thinking about my brother's screenplay that I had just read and some thoughts I have about it, and started thinking about another project that I have ideas about, and my mind started to kind of go into creative mode, and I didn't let it turn into like a freight train of like, okay, now my mind is just going to sail and I'm going to be up all night thinking these thoughts. It was just kind of more of an easy wakefulness. And I did realize it was a full moon. So the state that I had been in of being, and a full moon amplifies whatever state we're in will be amplified, and also whatever state we are habitually in will generally emerge as a more visible thing. So in other words, if we're kind of in a depressive state a lot of the time, the full moon will go and it'll feel really depressing, or fear will be amplified, or joy can be amplified. Meditative calm can be amplified. Easy, serene, peaceful wakefulness can be amplified. And so for I was up for hours. And then of course my daughter woke up at like 3:30 or somewhere in there, and I was having trouble sleeping. And so I went and lay with her and just kind of lay in the cold and rubbed her and let her take whatever time she needed to go back to sleep. And then I went back to bed. I did eventually fall asleep. But it was kind of like, this state is one where I'm not creating tension. Even being awake for hours in the middle of the night, it wasn't stressing me out. I was like, oh, I'm just wakeful, having some thoughts. I'm gonna go write some of those down. I'm gonna come back. Ooh, there's another one. I'm gonna write that one down. I'm gonna come back. I'm just gonna lie here. I'm gonna almost fall asleep. Oh, I hear Annalise. Should I check on her? It was just a kind of like easy state. And I was kind of encouraged by this. It felt good to feel that way, because it means I'm not creating so much tension. I'm not generating fear. And my body feels that way. My mind feels that way. My injured wrist feels that way. There's just an ease about it. And that's an awfully nice way to feel after the holidays too, because sometimes the holidays can be intense. And I think it's encouraging to me that just on the level of like, I am happy that I was able to kind of maintain that sense throughout. I felt like I kept an ease in myself throughout that whole time. I mean, it was only 4 days, but that's not nothing. That's kind of felt like an accomplishment, and it felt like felt like something that as we head into New Year's and I look at like, okay, the previous year, upcoming year, something I would definitely flag as significant for myself, and think about, what if I could carry that into the new year, and what if the new year could be characterized mostly by that state? What if my new year could be characterized mostly by a state of ease and peace and acceptance of what is, a willingness to be who and what I am, to give up some of the contractions and the stressors that I've felt compelled for whatever reason to keep in my life. Those ways in which I have tended to use a Stradivarius to hit a baseball. God only knows why I've been so attached to those patterns. But there you have it. But that to me sounds like a real kind of, a really beautiful frame for the year. A really conscious resolution for how I want to step into the next chapter. So that's where I am today, people. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Hope you had a great holiday. I'll see you soon.